What's good, Facebook Live? We about to go live in the next few seconds here. See you soon. It's up to you, man. I mean, actually, that works because I can get both of you in the same shot.
I mean, moving the chair because I'm wondering if the chair is making it.
Oh, no, I think all the chairs make it.
Just want to see I got some WD-40 in my car.
Upgrade mine.
Find some, yeah, I'm just on a chair. I need someone to eat and get out of here. I need a little spot.
You got a spot?
Take the subway. I mean, well,
Oh no, you know what? What's the
there's a
pizza
Burger
place?
King out there.
No, it's when you go back down, like as you're passing the Wise, like did you see the Wise grocery store? There's a little like pizza sub sandwich type shop. They're actually really nice and
Here we go.
pretty good.
What's good? What's good? Welcome back. You are inside the Culture Divide Experiment. Please be sure to follow us on Facebook at The Culture Divide, Instagram at The Culture Divide, and on Twitter at The Cultural EXP. Coming up after our show today, it's Let's Talk Baltimore, where they talk all about all local topics, from the headlines and everyday social issues. Today's topic, conflict resolution in the workplace. Now, we have the professor on here, our resident professor. And his expertise has been in communication. And tell me a little bit more about that expertise there, Kev. Give me a little bit more about that.
Yes, sir. So, my undergraduate degree was in business administration. I had a couple years working out in the workforce. And then from there, I opted to go and earn or work towards my graduate degree, my master's degree in organizational communication. So a lot of the topics that we covered talked about just the basic realm of communication within any organization, whether it's a public, nonprofit, private sector, things of those natures. So we did a lot of research as far as looking into what it takes to create effective and efficient communication in the workplace in general. So that's pretty much the basis of mine. I have, like you said before at the beginning of the show, have quite a few years in experience in training and development. So this is one of the things that I kind of pinpoint in on.
Excellent, excellent. Now, for us as trainers, we see this on a regular basis. Now, the great thing is for us is we come in and we take care and train the people. We see a lot of stuff, but then we are gone. Mm-hmm. So we're not there every day to see the conflict. But I do remember my time in management, and I do remember how in a lot of cases, when people had problems with each other, it was never resolved.
Oh, yeah.
It was never resolved. And I also see a lot of times in the workplace now where you try to go to some type of mediation, but then again, it's not resolved.
No.
So then you just end up just with two mad people or two mad parties. And in some cases, it's your manager, your supervisor, and also that particular frontline employee, and nothing ever gets resolved. And you're just they just become a hammer and hammer right at each other. Now, Kev, I remember from our time that the place shall remain unnamed. One of my first encounters with you was you were throwing some serious shade at your, I should say, supervisor. And like we came in and he came in and was like, listen, we want to, he wanted to have a discussion with his folks that were on his team. And he brought out a nice video for us to talk about and, how you dig down deep and it was just like this football thing. And I thought it was really inspirational. But I remember afterwards, I was giving examples of how leadership should take place, how people should perform. And I remember you stepped up more like, you know what? So what you're saying is if a person is not acting a certain way, then they're probably not a good leader. And as your leader was standing off to the side, I was like, okay, I'm feeling like I'm just walked into something here. But I'll never forget it because I remember how uncomfortable on the inside it was, but I know I had to keep going with it because I was like, okay, It doesn't matter here because obviously there's something going on between the two of them. You know, and yeah, I take it you remember exactly what I'm talking about.
I have some familiarity.
You begged me for remember that. But I remember that I wasn't pulled in to resolve it, obviously, but I know there are plenty of times where things like that go unresolved. And this is your leader. This is the person who's going to be giving you a raise eventually. This is they're supposed to be developing you. But when that conflict is there, and again, we are years later from that point.
Yes.
What are some of the things you've learned about those type of encounters, and some of the things that we should be doing differently to develop and to help those conflict resolutions?
Great question. So I think, just piggybacking on the example or that experience, he and I actually did come to, a little bit of time passed, but we did come to an agreement of understanding.
Good.
I think one of the biggest things when we talk about conflict and conflict resolution within the workplace is to have a mutual understanding. When you're in the workplace, the idea is to get the task done, get the task completed. This is what you signed up for. This is what you get paid to do.
Right.
So if we both, both parties or all three parties, however many parties are involved, if they can understand that the biggest thing is about completing the task, then you have an easier idea of saying what will complete that task and what will not complete that task.
Yeah.
All right? So I think he and I came to an agreement mostly because our idea is to complete the task. Now, personally speaking, my issue, one thing I appreciate within all people, I guess, is authenticity. Obviously, in the workplace, we're not always going to be our authentic selves because our authentic selves will not get us the job. Like you said, hey, look.
Indeed.
Like I said, you cannot.
Thank you, Professor.
Sometimes our authentic selves will not get us that job. So we understand that.
Oh man, we got to act. We got to act.
True indeed. However, you can, and this is one thing. I mean, it might be my personality in general and how I was raised, but you can be, and not to make a sexist statement, you can be a man of your word. So, or woman of your word. You can be about what you say.
Yeah.
And there are conflict in that time when somebody is saying some good stuff and they're not acting that same way.
Right.
So this particular situation, that may have been the issue. Now, years later, and this is years later, and I'm reflecting on it.
It took years?
No.
Oh, this is you reflecting years
right
later.
Now, because you just brought it up to me. Right now, I am not thinking about it. I don't have any negative connotations towards anybody involved in the situation. I wish everybody a lot of positivity, and this has come with my growth and maturity. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
I think that obviously back then when I was in that place, I was in my early 20s. There was a whole different dynamic in what was involved within Kevin Austin himself.
Right.
So my dynamic had to change so that I can understand these things that I am talking about now.
Right.
Wow. Now, I love that you said that because I remember a young Barry J and the seasoned Barry J now, two entirely different cats. Because I was the dude who was purposely the a-hole on the front line. I was the guy. Oh yeah. I was the guy who was asking the question that you shouldn't ask. In front of everybody to cause the conflict just because, hey, I got a question. and I was that guy. But
when is your birthday?
I'm a Capricorn, man.
Okay. We got something in common.
Right. With maturity comes growth.
Yes.
And I'm not that guy anymore. Now if I do have a question, then I'm going to ask that question off site or off topic. Hey, let me pull you to the side and have this conversation. And then now we can have a real conversation and with growth. Now, SJ, I look over to you because I remember something the professor said that he was like, at the end of the day, you have to realize that we have a common goal we're trying to achieve at the workplace. I will never forget something you told one of your supervisors/leaders was, we don't have to like each other to get the job done.
Yeah. I basically, in that situation, because it was a conflict and there was no resolution, like it got pretty nasty before it even mellowed out. And that's when I was like, okay, wait a minute. I knew that it had gotten out of control, but my remedy for it was, look, we don't have to be friends, but we do have to work together. So this is how we'll proceed. I now know where you stand on the issue. You know where I stand on the issue. I don't expect us to be friends. We will work together. I will speak to you. I will be cordial, but that's it. We're not hanging out after work. We're not talking about our kids or anything like that. Is this project done, or where are we at on the project? Okay, but other than that, that was it. I mean, because it was like in that moment of the heat of the conflict, I really got to see what this person thought of me.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was preconceived notions. Like, they hadn't taken the time to get to know me. But from their perspective, they felt like there were things that they were expecting from me that they weren't getting. And it wasn't so much work related as it was for them. In their words, they didn't feel that I was hungry enough. And at my point in my career, she was right. I'm not 20-something years old. I'm not like the hungry person that's running after, like, oh, okay, like, that fresh out of college kid. No, I'm not. Been there, done that. So I think it's kind of like, and we were talking about that the other day, how a lot of problems in relationships aren't the things that you think, but what it is unmet expectations. So she had these expectations of me that she felt that I wasn't meeting, and I had expectations of her that I felt that she wasn't meeting, and none of it was actually work related.
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
No, that's definitely powerful. And it's good that you brought up the word relationship, because I talk to my students and I tell them that no matter what environment you're in, it is all relationships. It is it's not always, obviously, it's not intimate relationships, but these are relationships that you develop. Whether it is, coworker to coworker, coworker to supervisor, coworker to CEO, whatever the case is, these are all relationships that you develop. And so now it is not about just what environment you're in, it's work related, but cultivating that relationship. I have learned in my experience, in my maturation, that it is easier to attract bees with honey than with vinegar.
Yeah.
Indeed.
And a lot of people do not get to that point.
Yeah.
And I think that is one of the biggest things when you talk about having equity in the workplace, where your pedigree should allow you to get promotions, but there's somebody who's just kind of, hey, look, we got haters out there. It's people who hate on you.
Absolutely.
They don't want you to succeed. They want you to be better than them. I would challenge those, because just like Richard Branson says, real leaders create more leaders.
Yeah.
They do not create good followers.
Yeah.
They create good leaders. So I would challenge those who are in those leading positions to look for the real leaders and then elevate them.
Absolutely.
Because every manager, I know you're about to, every manager is not a leader,
I was just
and
about
every
to say
leader is not a manager.
There is a total difference between a manager and a leader, and we could have a whole show just on that alone.
We probably
what
will.
makes up a good manager? What do you say? We probably will.
We probably will.
What makes a good manager and what makes a good leader? Because it's two totally different things, and people fail to realize that some of your people that are actually in what are designed to be leadership roles are actually just high-level managers that fell into those roles due to seniority and longevity.
And
Not so much that they're a great leader, but you know what? Barry J, you've been here for the last 15 years, man. It's time for you to get a promotion. You've been towing the line all this time. All right. And you suck at it.
Right.
Nobody's told you how to be a leader. Your personal skills suck. You know what I mean?
Right.
And now you're leading a group of people, some of them who know your personal skills suck, and some of them are coming in fresh-eyed and brand new to deal with your crappy personal skills.
Well, it's so funny because that's one of the things that we train on. It was like when we are sitting down with new leaders and old leaders, where today's world has changed. At one point, there was only one generation in the workplace at a time.
Oh yeah, that's 3.
Now four.
Oh, okay.
Four different generations in the workplace at one time, and you can't treat everyone the same exact way. At one point, it was you and I had the same motivations. We just wanted to make sure that we could buy a house, take care of our mortgage, send our kids to college and retire.
Yeah.
Now you are leading people that are fresh out of school who may need you to play mom, dad, uncle, coach,
Financial advisor.
financial advisor. You have to play so many different roles in the workplace as a leader now, and there are so many folks who are not prepared to do that.
No,
because
they're
they just
not.
want to be able to tell you, do as I say.
Yeah.
And that does not work in our society today.
Yeah.
Mad Men, Don Draper.
Yeah.
There you go.
This is the
Yeah.
old antiquated regime, but
Yeah.
it still plays out a lot in a lot of corporations today, especially in a lot of Fortune 500.
That
is
Those
very
big
true.
ones,
Yeah.
they have their own hegemony set up, and
Yeah.
they have it. And we did the research on it, so they
Yes.
had that set up
Mhm.
in hierarchies, and it is not you're not penetrating those things.
Right.
No,
But-
it's not going to change. The culture's built in so that no matter what, you're going to go through this phase. And just think about how many companies that are built like this that they're losing fantastic people.
Oh yeah.
Just because the culture doesn't fit to them and they've done nothing to update it. So you have all these 50-plus-year-old white men who are like in charge that are making things very
Or women.
difficult, or women
In some cases.
that are making things very difficult for people to actually grow within these roles.
Well, and then these companies call themselves trying to, jump into being more modern, being a more modern company to attract fresh blood, right? And what happens is they pick up things, they'll say, okay, we're going to start, people can telecommute 2 to 3 times a week. Well, their idea of telecommuting is you are literally tethered to a computer and a phone
The whole day.
the whole day. Let somebody send you an email or a phone call and you don't answer in like 1.5 minutes flat. They're like, what are you doing?
Seconds,
You're like,
not minutes. That's
I
too
just
long.
went to the restroom. You know what I mean? I took a lunch. If I were in the office, I would take a lunch. You know what I mean? Like, they just don't get it. And so they try these things trying to be modern and to keep up with the changing times. When the reality is they're not really prepared for that. They're not there. It's just their way of, it's like trying to put a Band-Aid on a bigger problem.
Indeed. And then now I'm still thinking of this conflict resolution, because what you just said is now all of a sudden the expectation, and we're going to use that word, of I expect, if you're working from home, I expect you to be able to answer an email like that. I expect you to be able to pick up the phone like that. So now this doesn't happen. Now we have this conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Now we got to have this meeting.
Yeah.
Now we got to have this sit down.
Mm-hmm.
And now we got to figure out how are we going to resolve this, because you're saying, hey, listen, I just want to go to the bathroom for a second. It's not like I'm running off and not working. It's just that according to your expectation, I'm not where I'm supposed to be. But now we have this conflict, and it's like, how do we cope with that?
But the meeting is never about that.
No.
That's where the first problem is. The meeting, because the person who's leading the meeting does not necessarily like conflict. So we're kind of throwing out vague terminology.
Ooh, does not like conflict,
Yeah.
but now we got to have to resolve
Passive
conflict
aggressive.
resolution.
We're
Passive
not-
aggressive.
We're not really
Mhm.
sure where your head is and how committed you are to us. Why? What makes you say that? Then they can't give you an example. You know what I mean? Or things like that. Like, this is a time where when we're talking about conflict resolution, we need to stick with the facts. Not about how you feel, not about how I feel. Let's stick with the facts when we're talking about what's really the problem so that we can get to the root of the cause and then we can come up with a solution. You talking about your
True.
emotions and me talking about my emotions, we can sit here and go back and forth and
Well,
not
I
resolve
feel like you're not
anything.
involved, or I feel like
Oh, yeah.
you're not. Well, wait a minute. Show me how I'm not involved.
No one here really thinks you like it here. Who are these people?
Well, I really can't say who that is.
Right. Well, I can't tell you that. Well, then why'd you bring it up? How's that helping anything right now?
All
You know
we're
what I
doing
mean?
is creating more conflict.
Exactly.
So, Professor, in your expert opinion, how does that communication open up properly? So, to my leaders that are out there that are listening right now, are going to actually go back and listen to this video or see this video, how should they begin this resolution versus creating more conflict? And I have to tell you, I've actually seen people when they've actually stepped outside of the role. They said, you know what, let's go outside of the workplace. And I've seen them at a bar setting. And I've actually been just like the fly on the side of the wall listening in, because I've seen a leader and a frontline employee, and they go at it, and they realize we haven't accomplished anything. All we've done is just talk at each other. We haven't heard with each other. We haven't done anything to resolve this. So, in your expert opinion, how do you begin this?
Well, I think when you're talking about conflict mediation, one of the biggest ways to actually get to that win-win situation that we all want to have is to go into the situation understanding that the idea, the intent, is to actually create resolution.
Yeah.
A lot of times we go into these meetings and the intent is not about actually creating resolution. It may seem that way,
Right.
but just like SJ, what you said, it's just a big nag fest,
Right.
or they're just harping on you,
Yeah.
they're venting frustration,
Yeah.
but there is no resolution of, okay, so now we've gotten past that, what do we need to do from here?
Right.
You never get to that point. A lot of those conversations. Why? Because tempers flare, people
Yeah.
get upset and offended. It is, this happens. We are humans. This is
Right.
what happens in the
Right.
daily interaction. But if there is no idea to say, hey, you know what? We're going to air out grievances to the effect of creating an environment where resolution can be established. Where we can actually get to a point of resolution where we concretely know what our next steps forward is to create now.
So
this
you're talking
is not-
about actionable items.
definitely, and this does not just happen in the workplace, but this happens in our interpersonal relationships
Oh yeah,
as well.
definitely.
And I did a lot of study on that too. There are times where there are issues, grievances that need to be aired out, but the problem is we air the grievances out and have no resolution, no course of action. What is going to happen after this?
Right. Yeah.
What can we do to create a more solid foundation? So in the workplace, we look at a couple different things. So if you, the idea to set up or ask for a mediation, a counsel, an outside source to come and help you guys come to a resolution. Now, bring back to the point that the example that you provided, he and I had a conversation, like you said, in closed doors in private. We came to an understanding of where we were on the level, where we were in our workplace, and understood that, look, I don't have no ill will toward you personally. My whole thing was, don't talk about things that you're not doing. I have no problem doing the things that will create the environment that we want to, which was to make sure that our customers and clients were happy. However, don't talk about things that you yourself in the management role will not do.
Right.
If you are saying that you have no problem doing the things you're talking about, then you and I have no issue.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of times, like you said, people get caught up in the emotional. Where do you get these, like you said, where do you get the idea that I am not fully invested? Why don't you look at what you guys are doing and then what your mission statement is?
Yeah.
To look at what it is, how do you come from this, how do you create these two, different points in time and then say, let's put those together.
Right.
So if you have differences in what your mission statement is and what you're actually doing, then you say, all right, well, now this is not a personal thing. This is about creating cohesion, consistency.
Right.
That's what the big thing is. So when you go into conflict resolution, you want to look at creating that cohesion, that consistency, and then say, these are the things that, obviously we're all humans. We have some personal grievances. Maybe I don't like your leadership style.
Right.
Maybe I don't like the way that you abrasively attack me in public in the meetings.
Yeah.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Maybe I don't like the way that you dismiss the ideas that I've given you so that you can send them up to higher management.
Right.
Maybe
because what you're talking about, and you brought up something that I love. How many times do you find that the company culture does not actually fit the management leadership style?
Oh gosh.
And I'm like, that's like 95% of the time.
All the time.
So that this person who is representing the company culture is not actually doing what the company culture should be like. The vision does not match the leadership style. And then now, all of a sudden, you have me as a frontline employee, and my direct supervisor or leader is the conflict begins where, well, wait a minute. I look at this vision of every time I walk into this particular building, and you're not living or doing anything about that. Now, who do I go to? I can't even go to HR because HR is going to have that manager's back 9 times out of 10.
Well, yeah, and just like I was saying when we were starting the chat on Facebook, a lot of times what happens is if you're the first person to speak up about that person, that manager or that leader, then, and they haven't heard that from anyone else, they're like, oh, it must be you then.
Yeah, you're gonna get ostracized. Yep, you're gonna get ostracized.
They try to wrap it up in a package to make you feel like something's gonna happen, and nothing happens. You sit down and have a conversation, and then the worst 2 things that can happen when it comes to conflict resolution or mediation is that you arrive to the meeting and your manager and whoever is mediating or their manager is already there having a conversation that immediately stops when you enter, or after you've had your conversation with them that they stay and hang behind because you already know there's nothing good coming from that in your behalf.
Or when they actually have a game plan for you.
Yeah.
They've already spoken before you've gotten there.
Yeah.
And basically this is a team up to
Yeah.
make sure we're a united front versus you.
Yeah.
Then a conflict resolution has not even gotten any better. Now I have to shout out to someone, to Lindell out there who basically said often the manager, the leaders don't even understand what the company culture is.
Yeah.
So again, I go back to, and I love the fact that as a contract trainer, I get to go in and take care of people and then get out because there are so many places that don't live by their own culture.
Oh, no.
And it begins with leadership, but then it gets filtered out until the point where I love Undercover Boss.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I love that show just because that reality, when they check and realize that, okay, I'm so far away from my business, I have no idea what's going on. And then they come back and try to resolve that and take care of different people. And look, I've seen one guy cry because he did not realize
how far gone he was from his business.
And how badly things are being run. I will never forget the episode I was watching, and I can't remember. Oh yeah, it was I think it was Hooters. And this manager was having these ladies do some very degrading things.
Oh yeah, I remember that episode.
Just to some type of tradition he came up with. And I remember when the CEO of the company was like, okay, I had to go off camera and make a call. Hey man, we got to get somebody down here because this dude is off the chain.
Right.
Because how do you not know what's going on in your own company? I just don't understand that, and it's mind-boggling to me to say I didn't know.
Well, think about it like this: if you have, if you create a business, and this business branches off, yes, you can manage. You'll have an idea of what's going on around 10 of them at the most. When you start going nationwide, does Roy Kroc know every single McDonald's is businesses and ins and outs?
I'm so glad you mentioned that. So I look at the culture of a Chick-fil-A. And the culture of a Chick-fil-A is you don't have to, I'm sorry, how can I put this? So McDonald's has their normal buy-in. And you can go in and say, I want to buy 12 different McDonald's.
Step away.
And step away and put people in place. Whereas Chick-fil-A is like, no. You will work it. If you want to have 12, you will want to work at every single one of them. Yeah. You're going to have hours in each and every single one of them. I will never forget when they came down to the place that shall remain unnamed. They came in and they wanted to serve us first.
I remember that.
And I will never forget that because they were like, we want to make sure we take care of you so that you take care of us. Now that's a culture from the top. And I remember how we were expecting these big crowds to come into the bar and the restaurant.
Nope.
They chose not to because they knew that leadership was around, upper management was around, and no one wanted. It didn't look good to be sitting at the bar drinking too much.
Right.
So they chose to go leave the facility and go out to other bars to get away because they knew upper management was going to be around. Now you're talking about you own your own Chick-fil-A, but then you still realize that the company culture is that of you're always on display. So a company like that takes it so very seriously that hey, look, man, I can't be drinking around these folks because they are serious about the culture.
But that means that, like you said, it starts from the top and it's carried through. So when something is wrong, there is action taken. There's something that happens to resolve it, to get past it. A lot of times in conflict resolution, nothing happens because when we sit down and talk, only thing that other person is listening for is for their response. They already know what they already gone through in their mind what they want to say to you. They don't care what you're saying because they're smiling and nodding and acting like they're listening to you when the reality is they're just waiting for you to stop talking so they can get to their agenda. They're not hearing what the issues are. And then sometimes in some cases it becomes more intense because they don't realize, especially when you start talking about situations where the demographic of the company is different than your cultural background and makeup.
Ooh.
So they don't even see the ostracizing that they're doing to you because in their mind they're like, what?
Oh, I'm glad you brought that in because now you're talking about, all right, there's a difference between how we talk to each other. Now all of a sudden you're bringing in a different factor, that cultural difference, because in your world you're so used to being able to come down like the hammer and saying you need to get on your job. Yo, hold up, man. Who the hell do you think you're talking to like that? Wait a minute. And not understanding that you have to play so many different roles now and understand how people are motivated differently. I've seen in certain cases where certain managers or leaders have the same technique or style with everyone. They come down like a hammer.
Yeah.
And for me being a 40-plus-year-old man, you can't come at me that way.
Right.
We can have a discussion and you can give me some, hey, look, I would love to see certain things. I could love to see you improving this, that, and the other. Cool, no problem. Now we're having a discussion. But now you can't come at me and say, I don't think you're getting the job done. Whoa, bro. I mean, I'm paying a mortgage. I got a couple of kids. Look, who you think you're talking to?
Right.
You
Now,
can give me respect.
Right.
You can give me respect as a grown individual. I think, Barry, that's what you're saying.
Yes.
That you might be in a position of subordinates for a time, but understand that we are all adults. And we have some aims and goals and ambitions. You don't have to talk to me like I'm 17.
Yeah.
This is not my first job. This
Right.
is what you're saying.
exactly.
You can talk to me as an adult. You can just, hey, Barry, you know what? You mind if we have a talk maybe over lunch or something like
Absolutely.
that? Let me talk to you about some of the things we're trying to do and some things you might be able to work on. I think that when we talk about conflict resolution, it's a two-sided coin.
Oh,
It is not just the subordinate. It is the person who is in the supervisory roles who needs to understand that they have an impact in how they relate this information to the subordinate.
Yeah.
Like you said, if they coming down with the hammer and stuff like that, expect some backlash.
Yeah.
Expect the hammer to come back.
Exactly.
Expect some defense.
Right.
Expect something to happen.
Right.
But, and this is what I've learned in my role now. Obviously, I'm not the supervisor, but as a professor, I teach a group of individuals who are in this classroom to learn. And so the way that I talk and interact with them has to change because I have to understand that they are humans too.
Yeah.
And outside of this workplace, if I had seen them, I could see them in a McDonald's somewhere.
Indeed.
Hey, what's going on? How you doing? You know what I'm saying? I have a couple. Man, I ran Chipotle. One of my students worked at Chipotle. I ran to her at Chipotle. Okay, so we are all humans.
Right.
You guys are here because you're trying to do something. So my whole ambition is, and this is what I think, Barry, you talked about it, when leadership does not, they don't have the benefit of the employee in mind. When leadership does not want to create more leaders, they rather have good followers, then they're not open to that line of communication.
Yeah.
But when you have, and it's a very small selective group, but they are coming out there, but when you have good leaders who say, you know what, I value the contributions and the feedback of the people